Welcome to the Tea Time Podcast, where it's all about taking a few healthy minutes each day just for you, with your host, Sharissa Bradley.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode for the Tea Time Podcast. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited that you're here. I made a small mistake last week when I mentioned that this week we were going to talk about elimination diets, when in fact we are actually talking about clean eating. And I wonder if you've heard those buzzwords before, and I wonder if you've ever thought, what does it actually mean to eat a clean diet? And when I first heard these terms, I thought that it meant like actual cleanliness. Like, am I washing my food? Am I taking care to make sure that my station is clean and orderly? Like, what does it mean to eat clean foods? Well, some people have the school of thought that clean foods are the foods that you would find at the perimeter of a grocery store, like the deli and the produce section, things that were whole foods that didn't need to be packaged or bagged in any way. And that would signify that it wasn't processed or it wasn't containing a multitude of ingredients that we couldn't pronounce. And that seemed to fit what clean eating was. So it's these perimeter foods and no real ingredient type items. But I happen to think that there's actually a wider range of ways that we can eat in a clean fashion. One of those ways that I suggest in the book, I actually suggest three. So one of them is mindful eating. One of them is eating seasonally, and the other one is eating culturally. So when we eat mindfully, what I mean by that is there's no other distractions. The meal itself is the activity. There's no TV or even conversations happening outside of the meal itself. And when we do that, we see the optimal amount of body systems like coming online and working appropriately. For example, before we even eat food, just the smell of food turns on the gustatory system and starts what we think of as like salivating or saliva. And that actually has enzymes in it to start breaking down the food. From the minute that we start thinking or smelling food, we get this reaction that actually down the line helps to break down the foods. The saliva has enzymes in it, and when we start eating and when we start chewing specifically, then all of these processes in the body start to signal to turn on. We are eating. It is time to eat, and it is time to digest food. On the other side of that, when we're watching a show or when we're driving or when we're having a conversation, the brain is taking in the input that is the most important thing that we're doing, the driving or the show or the conversation, not necessarily the food and the digestion part of it. So I feel that if we even just sit down and eat a meal, whatever it is that's on that plate, but we do it mindfully, where we're paying attention and we're having all of these processes and these systems turn on, I have found that even if the meal itself isn't exactly whole foods or clean foods, that the digestive system will still do its job properly, and you'll still get the most out of that meal because you're eating with the meal in mind. So the body is doing all the things that it's supposed to do and primed to do when we actually eat that food. So eating mindfully can be a way of actually clean eating that doesn't require you to have any kind of certain thing on the plate. It doesn't have to have a portion or a size or a color. It can just be that you're focused on it and that you're paying attention to it, and your body knows exactly what it needs to do to digest that food and to use those nutrients. So one way we can eat cleanly is just by simply focusing on the meal as the activity. The other way I mentioned was eating seasonally. And what this means is wherever you are regionally, there is a specific crop of food, vegetables, whatever it is that is produced in that area at a season. So for instance, if you lived in Southern California and you wanted to eat strawberries, the best time to do that would be right in the middle of the summer when they're growing naturally. The other side of that is when we eat foods that are outside of the season, like using that same example, strawberries in Southern California, but change that season to winter, you're actually going to get a produce that's grown a little further away, that was picked a little before it was ripe, and didn't get as much of a chance to develop the nutrient value that it would have if it was peak season in that peak region. So that's what I mean when I say eating seasonally. When we get the foods that are naturally growing in our area during that time, those are going to be the most nutrient dense foods. And you can very easily figure this out if that's something that you don't want to think about yourself. Go to a farmer's market, because the farmer's markets are going to sell the seasonal produce in that area, typically within 50 to 150 mile radius of where you live. And you're going to meet those farmers and they're going to tell you, look at this Swiss chard that I got fresh from the garden right this week. And that is what is in season. And that is going to be cut at its peak ripeness and peak nutrient density. And that is going to digest and give you so much more than, say, those strawberries in the winter. So that is another way that we can eat clean. It's not necessarily where you're getting things in the stores or where you're shopping for them or what's in the package or on the package. This has to do with peak freshness, peak ripeness in your specific region. One way that I did this a long time ago was subscribing for a CSA vegetable and produce box. And what that is a group, a collaboration of people who come together to support a farm. You pay an expense or a fee every week or every month, and delivered is a box of fresh seasonal produce. So you don't have to think about anything at all. And you also get to experience things you probably wouldn't have bought for yourself and learn about new produce that is growing seasonally in your area. The last thing that I have in here that is also what I consider clean eating is culturally eating. And what that means is maybe asking your oldest living relative where it is that your family comes from. And once you know that information, you can also ask, what are some of the foods or the meals that they made on a regular basis? What would be like a Tuesday night meal for your culture? And then I would challenge you to recreate that, or at least try something from your culture once a month. And I absolutely consider this clean eating, because the body will remember and know what these foods are and where they come from. And it'll be so nourishing to you that I do feel that cultural eating fits in that clean eating category as well. So I hope I've given you a bunch of different ways to look at what clean eating actually is, and not just this like very specific diet, but rather the way that we go about eating things, the way that we go about understanding our culture and our diets, and the way that we go about actually putting those nutrients into our body can also fit us into a clean eating category. So I want to challenge you this week. The action steps in this book are to reach out to your oldest living relative and find out what your cultural foods are. And then see if you can find one family recipe that you're able to recreate over the coming months, and just get back in touch with your culture, get back in touch with the heritage through the food and the legacy of that. And I am so excited next week to finally be sharing with you about elimination diets. I know I've been teasing it and made the mistake this week, but next week for sure, we will be talking all about the different types of elimination diets and how those things can affect your healing journey. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you for another episode next week. Bye.
Thank you for spending your tea time with us. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.